Senator Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President, and first let me thank you for giving me first call on your ears. Thank you, sir. Mr. Deputy President, allow me to take the liberty of starting this short peroration with or should I say, in a way in which I started my first submissions here in this chamber. I took the liberty at that time of alluding to the use of a phrase which is usually attributed to Mark Twain, but actually was first stated by the French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal. And Blaise said, "I have made this letter longer than usual because I have not had the time to make it shorter." Now, Mr. Deputy President, today speaking in the middle of the debate, and for, if I may call it, a self-imposed constructed short cycle, I am encouraged to invoke Pascal and to seek to say more in a limited time, or better yet, in essence, to stick to the, well, I could say to stick to the knitting, but I could say also to stick to the more prosaic substance over form. And in focus, and in doing so, I shall be brief, but hopefully succinctly so, in critical areas which assume a special relevance in these 2018 estimates of expenditure and income. Now, the wide scope of the estimates, Mr. Deputy President, calls or requires me to put these remarks in some form of philosophical or epistemological basis, and one which seeks to base this contribution on these large and important sums of proposed expenditure, and dare I say income as well. Mr. Deputy President, you will remember in the 1970s, there was Peter Jay, the economist, who developed a way of thinking. I wouldn't call it a theory because it was very much a way of thinking. It was very much in the method of John K. Galbraith, whom my friend Senator Hunt alluded to not only with promptness, because he alluded to him immediately in his speech, but also with a certain element of sagacity. So let me say that Peter Jay, we all remember his market socialism, and I would like that to guide my remarks this afternoon. They'll be brief. I would also like to marry that, if I may be so bold, as to ascribe my own little philosophy, if you will. I wouldn't even call it a philosophy, I'd call it more of a wish or a prayer. And one of what I call guided optimism. And obviously, as you know, a philosophy, if one can put it at that level, I call it guided optimism, a wish or a prayer, is nevertheless less structured. But even though less structured, Mr. Deputy President, it still carries some of the elements, if you will, of an ideology or of a way of thinking. Because no matter how prosaic or mundane one may wish to suggest that it is, it still essentially is a critique of the existing order, a concept of a higher order, and essentially a program for getting there. And maybe this might be a way in which I could look at this 2018 appropriation bill, which is before this chamber, and which comes at the time of continuing and chronic economic malaise. It is now endemic and recognized by all. An ongoing malaise forces rethinking. An ongoing malaise also requires re-evaluation. And also, and finally, an ongoing malaise very often calls on the need for restructuring. But what has been, and we could go into the cause of the malaise. We know all of the problems. We know the fall in the second home market around 2009, and all of the other features. When Senator Boyce speaks, he normally has a very eloquent and concise way of giving us the reasons for the malaise, and I wouldn't attempt to even dare to think that I could match what he does and what he says in doing so. So let me instead have a look at what has happened in 2017, and which puts us where we are. The economy continued to encounter major macroeconomic challenges, all part and parcel of that declining malaise, that declining international reserves and weak public finances. We had, and we registered as well, a modest improved economic activity as in previous years, but the growth rate moderated to a mere 1%. The fiscal deficit fell by $197 million during the first 9 months of the fiscal year, and government continued its efforts to strengthen public finances. This deficit is the lowest in 7 years, was associated with improved revenues coming from the tax measures of the past 2 years, and obviously the stabilization of non-interest expenditures. But unfortunately, sadly for all of us, the improvement was not as great as was anticipated. Yet the lower deficit, together with an adjustment of monetary policy, less borrowing from the central bank, allowed for a substantial reduction in credit, government credit, in new credit by government to the central bank. Modest growth was experienced in tourism earnings, even though tourism, and I will say a lot about that later, because that is really the stellar part of the economy, as Senator Irene Sanford Garner said so eloquently today in a speech which I wish I could listen to it on and on, because I enjoyed it so much, and there was a lot of content in it. So with approximately 6.6 weeks for import cover, Barbados has moved under the desired 12 weeks. It's a place that we don't like to reach. And I say all that, Mr. Deputy President, just to put in context the Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018. Because this plan, as I see it, and I say this, I mean, in here we all know what it's all about, Mr. Deputy President, but I understand that we are carried sometimes on the airwaves, and many young people no doubt are listening, and they hear about this Sustainable Recovery Plan, and they say, well, what is this? We just keep hearing everybody's talking about it as if we know what it is. So let me just, for those young persons, let me just say that it has and I may be incorrect, but as I see it, it has 6 pillars. Essentially, to build a comfortable net international reserves level by 2020. Secondly, to achieve fiscal sustainability through a balanced budget, also by 2020. Thirdly, to accelerate real GDP growth to reach 3% by 2021. Fourthly, to establish a credible and sustainable debt management plan. Fifthly, to enhance and safeguard the provisions for social development. And 6, to reduce the unemployment level on average by 8%. To 8%, my apologies, by 2020. Now, the thematic areas as outlined within the schedules of the document, with the associated key performance indicators, dependencies, timelines, and accountabilities. And they include fiscal sustainability, secondly, growth, foreign exchange, and social services. Now, one thing I should mention, Mr. Deputy President, is that this plan, quite sensibly, recognizes the need for the financial resources to make it work. It's a plan, but it's not going to happen without certain financial resources. It indicates that such resources will be derived from a number of key sources on a fiscal year basis through what we are doing here, the estimates and expenditure exercises. The programs and strategies will be aligned to the respective program budget exercises and estimates. And the shortfalls on support financing will be obtained through the reallocation of government budget resources, regional finance institutions, listen to that, international development organizations, utilization of existing and new arrangements in the form of public-private partnership mechanisms and development, and technical cooperation funding, philanthropic investment, and special user fees. So you see, there's a premise here that these elements will work and will work to make the plan work. And I don't mean to be tautological there. I'm just trying to be precise. The plan is also premised, Mr. Deputy President, on a hope that the private sector will contribute funds towards this national effort. And that is something that we must not forget. And I think there's obviously a reason why the plan, as it was considered and as it was formulated, whatever interpretation you may put to it, but if I look at it carefully, I think it is signed also by the chairman of the Private Sector Association. It's also signed by the president of the Congress of Trade Unions and Staff Associations, and by the General Secretary, not that was, but the present General Secretary of the Barbados Workers' Union. That is. But let me tell you, sometimes, that was is sometimes still is. And I say that, Madam, I say that, Mr. Deputy President, with the best light, in the best light, in respect of both persons, and the past General Secretary knows the great admiration for which I hold his intellect and his skills and his ability to, as we say in the popular parlance, to finesse a matter. So let me say that is important. The buy-in which has been sought and which has been achieved, at least in terms of putting signatures to the plan. I will not analyze that part. That is not my role. I leave the rest of that for us to consider and to debate, and those who are knowledgeable in the area of public policy will no doubt, give their views on what are the ramifications for that in terms of how the plan evolves. Now, I suggest, therefore, Mr. Deputy President, that the ability to finance this recovery plan will rest to a large degree on the ongoing quality of efficiency which is displayed in the implementation of the plan. I think that that can never be forgotten. For in the final analysis, such a broad and bold plan will be integrally tied to the political will which is exercised in making the plan work as closely as possible to its stated objectives. Now, I am advised, and I think all of us are, and we hear about it because we know we are constitutionally due for a general election before sometime in June. And what is evident is that in all of today's parliamentary democracies, governing and administering have become closer aligned, even though the roles and responsibilities of the two sets of actors, those who govern and those who administer, vary. Notwithstanding this traditional levels of analysis dichotomy, the boundaries, Mr. Deputy President, are no longer substantial in form and practice. And it is my respectful submission that this plan will therefore unfurl, listen to my choice of words, unfurl in 2018 before it can later unfold. So that is my view of the plan, that summarized in that one sentence. Yes, it will unfurl in 2018, but it will then later unfold. Now, one of the things, Mr. Deputy President, and I don't want to think, I would not wish you, sir, to think that that I'm just here repeating myself all the time whenever I come into this chamber. But one of the areas which will be critical to this plan will be, again, the whole matter of, sometimes we call it business facilitation, sometimes we call it the efficiency of the public service, but it's not just the public service. I look at it in terms of business efficiency as a whole. That will be important. It will be important. I've had a few words to say on this before, and so therefore I won't go into it in any great detail, but what I will again repeat is that it is time for us to consider the use in a select kind of way of our retirees. Sometime back, and again, it's in the Hansard, I wouldn't repeat it, I mentioned the need for, I think I called it a Chief Public Service Commissioner. And I suggested that we could have persons, retirees, and that this Chief Public Service Commissioner, I suggested, could work with a number of commissioners whom he or she would have to assist in their selections, and whose collective remit would include a modernizing mandate with available applied technologies, and they're here, of state agencies and processes. And I identified at that time, Mr. Deputy President, the Registry of Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property, the Supreme Court Registry, the Bureau responsible for the process of police certificates of character, the Land Tax Office, the Department of Immigration, the overall traffic management process and flows, to name just a few, that are ripe and seeking modernization, seeking processes, improved processes, which could inure to rapid economic development. And I am, as they say, Mr. Deputy President, I like to give Jack his jacket. And this is, what I am saying is not to suggest that everything works badly or that the country is falling apart in terms of its bureaucratic systems. I would not dare suggest that, sir. Because only this morning, I said guided optimism, if you remember. And only this morning, I got news from someone who is near and dear to me, and who went to the National Registration Office in Warrens. And that person went to get the national ID card, and also to to register, because as you know, rumor has it that we do have an election. If we were going to be classical, we would say, illi fama refert. Rumor has it. But anyhow, and when this person went to Warrens to commit these two acts, or to commit to these two acts, the efficiency, the charm, and the savoir-faire, everything was there. It was amazing. And it's always nice to get these good stories. And this is why Senator Lady Haynes' speech was so dear to my heart, because she too was able to produce so many good stories. Because good stories, what do? They influence us to correct the bad stories. So I see this very good. Yes, we need a public, we need a bureaucratic shake-up. We need to find mechanisms to do this. We need to find a way, even if it requires some fancy study from, some of these top-notch guys who operate out of London and Massachusetts, not necessarily New York, but, where they come in and in a couple of weeks, they move things here and there, and they have little computers and they touch them and everything sort of, comes in. Yeah, they're magicians. And then things happen. So we need that. We recognize we need it, but let us not feel that all is lost, because even without that, we have levels of efficiency, and we have levels also of goodwill, which are very important. And as this is very nostalgic as we come to the end of this Senate thing, because I would say, as we all know, from being here together as a group, having spent 4 to 5 years here together, we build up a certain level of oneness, irrespective of how we speak or from where we speak. We build up that oneness, which transcends all of those things, just by our being in the same space. I'm rambling, I'm sorry, Mr. Deputy President, but I'm told that I'm allowed to ramble on the last speech. Yes. So, I suggest then, Mr. Deputy President, that the challenge for us here, when we look at these estimates, is twofold. It is twofold from a sectoral point of view. In the first, or should I say on the first level of analysis, we have to boost our existing structures. And on the second level of analysis, we have to encourage new and emerging structures and make them even better. So let me look at one of our existing structures, if you will, and I'm using the term very loosely. And I chose this after listening to Senator Irene Sandiford Gardner. And not only that, but also in my little readings recently, recognizing how well our tourism is doing now. And her points were well taken. Wherever you go, people are there. I was at a National Trust open house last week. Over 300 people, 400. And, people are just coming. People want, and people are doing things. And visitors are widening the visitor experience. They're not just sticking to, go into the beach and what have you. They're widening the visitor experience. So I thought, why don't I come back to one of my old hobby horses and see how we can, I said, we have to boost existing structures. How can we boost this structure and even do more? And we have to do more because remember, we have challenges. Every time there's success and there are opportunities, there are always challenges. The big challenge to our tourism, as we all know, is our sewerage issues at the moment. And we cannot bury our heads in the sand. We have to be, I spend a lot of time telling people, it's getting fixed. It's getting fixed. We all have to play that role. But we have to be sure that we have to put our heads together and make sure that that is not something which embarrasses us and puts all of the good work that we have done and which Senator Garner has done and her minister, we can't spoil that.
That's right.
Can't spoil it. So whoever is out there listening to me, I suggest through you, Mr. Deputy President, that let them know that this is priority number one for Barbados today. Tourism, and going back to my point, and a point which Senator Duran in an earlier debate had made. I remembered his points very well. He spoke about religious tourism, faith-based tourism. I suggest that we have to recognize that this is another area, and this is not for Senator Garner's ministry, this to be dealing with. This is for the organizations. This is a self-help measure. You know, I always talk about self-help in here, Mr. Deputy President. So we have to, those of us in religious organizations, have to recognize that religion, or tourism I should say, with a spiritual theme, is one of the fastest growing global industries. The World Tourism Association estimates that 300 to 600 million persons visit the world's important religious sites every year. In the case of Americans who travel overseas for religious or pilgrimage reasons, the U.S. Office of Travel and Tourism indicates that 1 million nationals currently travel, which is an ongoing yearly increase by 5 to 10%. By way of contrast, more than 15 million persons on a yearly basis attend religious meetings overseas, and the United Methodist Church in America has had a 500% increase in mission volunteers since 2000. These are staggering figures. Furthermore, there exists a Christian Camp and Conference Association, which indicates that more than 10 million persons are engaged in their member camps and conferences, including over 125,000 churches. Indeed, over 50,000 churches in America have religious travel programs. On a worldwide basis, religious tourism is estimated at a value of close to $30 billion US, with a figure of approximately 300 million travelers. And the experts tell us that it is possibly today's fastest growing travel segment. The research further tells us something which will surprise us, that young persons make up 1/3 of faith-based travelers. So that is an interesting thing for the future. Very interesting. So, faith-based travel also, I suggest, while not recession-proof, is less prone to the vicissitudes of the financial marketplace. I say that because such travelers are generally committed travelers. They will tend to save money for travel and tours. And you could safely say, will travel irrespective of the economy. And I suggest that we here in Barbados are poised with great opportunities. Because we have a lot to offer in this regard. In the first place, it represents an example of multiple religions with Christianity in its many dimensions: Jews, Muslims, Rastafarians, Buddhists, Hindus, and members of the Baha'i. Of no less significance for a visitor is the potential to experience religious tours around specific or extended facts of the local spiritual experience. Example, there's a story to be told about the church around 1820 to 1840 and its role in education. I wouldn't go into that. I've done that recently in another place. But there are so many other things, that we could be talking about. The Greek emperor at St. John's the ancestral home of Senator Fraser in St. John's churchyard. The Chase Vault at Christchurch. I mean, there are so many interesting things, you know, that one can, to use the popular parlance, spin a story. I think that's what they say, the young people, spin a story. So, I suggest, Mr. Deputy President, that the business opportunities are ripe for individuals in their churches to use their church connections, or indeed to act individually, and to carefully organize faith-based tourism to Barbados. This could be a very significant economic driver. So young people who are looking for something, you know, somebody may not have, somebody may not have a job, but you know, you get your computer. Everything now is done, so to speak. I'm told they call it online. So, Mr. Deputy President, you and I don't know as much of this online as some of the other people do. But let me assure you, sir, that this online thing is very effective and it's very powerful. So I suggest that young persons who could look at developing, an activity through his or her church to set up a positive religious tour experience. And you know, this is something that really no government support is needed. Minimal support from the banks is required. But if indeed some was needed, I'm sure some friendly banker would assist, or a credit union. I saw the leader of government business, and immediately I thought of a credit union because I know of her role, her pioneering and ongoing role in that institution, the credit union. So I say this, Mr. Deputy President, to suggest that this is one of the ways in which we can boost an existing structure. This is one of the ways in which we can mitigate against that threat, which I mentioned, and this is a way in which we can add to the fabric of what we already have. I speak about the new structures. This is actually going pretty quickly. How long do I have here, sir? May I ask? Oh, good. That's good. You know, I've so got used to the half an hour that with this budget this estimates experience is so but I don't plan to use it all. No, I don't use it all, but at least it's good to know what we have. So I mentioned boosting existing structures, and now I speak about encouraging new structures. And I would like to refer to one of them, which I've said about in here from time to time, but I would like to, should we say, give an update, because it's a new structure, but it's gone to a slightly higher level. And that is the recent launch of the international securities market of the Barbados Stock Exchange. It is now a fait accompli. It has happened. You know, we were talking about it and I kept saying this thing is going to happen. It has now happened, Mr. Deputy President, and it represents an important step. Why? Mr. Deputy President, this is a market which is a vehicle for the listing and trading of securities of issuers who may or may not be incorporated in Barbados, and who may otherwise have been listed or traded on other exchanges around the world, such as, for example, the second-tier markets of Canada, United States, United Kingdom. Mr. Deputy President, it is not a new concept, because these benchmark exchanges, or rather I should say the benchmark exchanges, such as Bermuda, Cayman Islands, and Channel Islands, are in the market already, undertaking this type of business with growing success. And this new development will give expanded legal status to the provision of a seat for exempt securities, which as early as 1989, was established when on behalf of a major Canadian company, operating here, but with significant business in Hong Kong. An accommodation was made to allow its local IBC to trade on the Hong Kong exchange without question or recourse, and that was in 1989. And I'm very happy that a little operation with which I'm associated was able to play a role in that. So I am suggesting, Mr. Deputy President, that with this new opening up of the ISM, it is capable of attracting new types of international business to Barbados. It also encourages the use of our double tax treaties, and it allows new types of business to be undertaken, as in the case of listed sponsors. And we now have 3 listed sponsors. Its core products will be equities, bonds, and other fixed interest securities. And not to be forgotten, also mutual funds. The advantages, Mr. Deputy President, are many. The potential advantages. The ISM will magnify and glorify the range of products in the Barbados' international business sector. And if we are able to get a listing in London, which is something that is being worked on very carefully, we will have, should we say, hit the jackpot. And I'm sure that we will try to do that, because we have people who are knowledgeable in that area and whom we're prevailing upon to work with us and to make it happen. In addition, if we look at new structures, we can look at the Arbitration and Mediation Court of the Caribbean. Again, something that I mentioned in the early days here, a couple of years ago when we started this 93rd Senate session. I have the good news to say that the center has been launched. It was launched in the last quarter of 2017. I go one step further, and I say that on Friday night, we will now launch the rules, and we will have people coming in. We have people coming in from overseas who have shown interest and who are going to be joining us as arbitrators, as mediators, and generally operating, to use the popular parlance, in the ADR space. Mr. Deputy President, that's another word that you and I have got to be familiar with, get familiar with. This space. Space is now being used in a very wide way. So space now has, contextually, knows no bounds, Mr. Deputy President. But anyhow, people are coming in to do this, sir. And this, with our promulgating of these rules in this month of February, and with the publication of our dispute resolution panels, this will yet be another important regional and international institution headquartered here in Barbados, with a wide global range of professional service delivery. So this is very exciting. Very, very exciting. But it is something, again, it is nice to know that as we close this Senate session, that this too has come to pass, as they say. But we talk, sir, about encouraging new structures, and we also talk about encouraging the negotiation of co-production treaties. I mentioned that in terms of the film festival, and I'll come back to that. And we are advancing that with jurisdictions such as Canada, New Zealand, Britain, United States, and many more. It's a big hope for the benefits of the local film industry. And this industry has great ramifications for the transfer of technology and skills, substantial income generation, and the furtherance of youth opportunities for career development. I give an example. As a result of the first film festival, we were able to encourage, and we say thanks to the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. on this one, because they co-sponsored it with us. We were able to attract the making of a film on the garrison, or historic area. And that film was a collaboration grant. It was a collaboration between local filmmaker Clish Gittins and foreign filmmaker who had been present at the first film festival. And that film was shown at the current film festival, which ended about 4 weeks ago. And it is now, so to speak, in the public space, sir. If I might go back to space. I'm rather intrigued if I like that word, sir. So that was a clear example of collaboration taking place, and it was taking place as a result of the festival. Transfer of technology. Barbadian young filmmaker gains the experience, not only in terms of making the film, but then his name is out there, if you will. And he did it. I failed to mention, he collaborated with Noah Lang, and Noah Lang is the son of Stephen Lang, and Stephen Lang is the director of Avatar. So you see, you know, there's a ripple effect here, sir, which has an ending with a nice pond, if you will. It's a good ripple effect. So all of these things are happening. I will speak now a little about, when I say encouraging new structures, sir, one of the things I have championed, again, over the 4 years, 5 years, or whatever it is here, is the importance of innovation and development, and how important it is for us to innovate, but not just to innovate, but to build on a legacy of innovation of which this country can really and truly be proud. And one of the things I mentioned, and I will advert to it again, is the innovation, say, which has taken place at the Bel Airs Research Institute here in Barbados. And, but even before Bel Airs, let's look at, say, some of the work of Colin Hudson, the late Colin Hudson. And coming after lunch, I think it's not inappropriate that I should speak on the invention of the yam digger. I think we had some yams, I don't remember. But the yam digger is simple in design, and a machine that can be manufactured on the farm, a long angled blade and attached prongs, which pull along behind a tractor. And this innovative rocking arm shakes the blade as it moves through the earth, loosening the yams from the clumps of earth so that they can be harvested without damage. And this is being used and has been used for quite a while, but it was invented here. And it represents, obviously, an advance over the traditional back-breaking method of digging out yams with a fork. And obviously, when you do that, I was just about to say that. It shows that my friend is very familiar with the agriculture, because when you have to dig them up with the fork, very often, you damage the yam, and you lose a lot of yams that way. Now, and I could go into all the modifications which have taken place as a result to the yam. There's the Sunbury sweet potato digger, and I won't go into that. But there are so many other inventions that have been taking place here. We all remember the late James Corbin and easy cricket, now in worldwide use. But Bel Airs is what I call the sleeping giant, because Bel Airs was very much the forerunner of solar energy here in Barbados. In 1959, Bellairs made a policy decision to focus on solving problems of scarcity of water and power affecting individuals and small communities in dry areas. And over 50 years ago, in 1962, the installation and testing of a 1 kilowatt Quirk windmill began with a small group of researchers from the Brace Experiment Station at Spring Head in Barbados. And this type of research on wind power continued in Barbados, it continued in Montreal, and it continued in Haiti, right into the 1970s. And in 1973, Brace wind turbine designs were optimized technically and structurally, and final designs were submitted to manufacturers for commercial production. That started right here. I mean, we may also like to remember that the solar water heating industry, we were the second in the world to deal in that space, sir. Yeah, we were the second after Israel. And as happens in these things, so unfortunately, we got all the tax breaks, the income tax breaks for the use, and then it's like if it was felt that we had done too well, and you know, and the tax breaks just went away. So that when we should have had, by now, in my view, they came back, but you know, there was never any clear policy on it. But we should have had a solar water heating tank and planks, whatever, on every house in Barbados. We should have had that. And, you know, and we would have moved to photovoltaic, and we would have been way ahead of the game. But there were so many other successful firsts, if you will, at Bellairs. How to make a solar still. Report on implications of using wind power for development of small Caribbean communities. These were reports and actual technical guides. How to construct a cheap wind machine for pumping water. That was in 1979. How to heat your swimming pool using solar energy. We were doing that in 1979 here at Bellairs. Roof integrated solar collectors in animal shelters. We were doing it in 1983 at Bellairs. Development of a diaphragm hand pump based on recycled auto parts and construction of other pumps using alternative energy for irrigation. 1986, we're doing it at Bellairs. And also a report of methods of solar water disinfection. Very important, 1994. So we have been in the vanguard. We have been in the vanguard. There is more that I could say on this, but I will not. But what I will say is that Bellairs continues to host several Barbados Field Studies semester programs and field excursions that involve students from McGill and their mentors and advisors in Barbados. So it's a true cross-cultural collaboration, if you will. But what has happened at Bellairs also, and which we must never forget, and which to me is the pinnacle of achievement, even though it might seem small, is that Bellairs has now collaborated to form, well, not to form, but out of which has been formed the Coral Reef Restoration Alliance, CORAL. And CORAL has been formed. It is a very active and engaged grassroots nonprofit entity. It's open to the public. Anyone can join, and indeed everyone is encouraged. It is citizenship-led, and it has maximum, I should say, as maximum as possible citizen participation. And again, I repeat, open to the public. So this type of innovation is, should we say, endemic to the system. And we have to build on it. You know, we have to build on it. We have to move towards being well, not being, because I think we're a center of innovation, but we have to move towards being recognized as a center of innovation. Because when we do that, that carries a lot of other rewards. And that recognition starts with our own self-recognition as a center of innovation. That then spurs us on to do other things. It spurs us on, and I would say it would have spurred us on to have accepted renewable energy in a way that we should have accepted it. Because we know, and the evidence is there, that we can satisfy 100% of our needs from solar, wind, and other renewable resources. And we know that the permanent and the immediate foreign exchange windfall will be equal to about 25% of our foreign earnings. Just think of that. That is something that I suggest, and let me put it this way, I was delighted to see in today's paper that potential large independent producers of renewable energy will soon have an idea as to the rates they could earn supplying power to the national grid. And I congratulate Senator Boyce in absentia, to whom that article is ascribed. But let me say, Mr. Deputy President, that we have to take on renewable energy as a policy. We have to study it carefully. We have the technical expertise there. Mr. Aidan Rogers, who at one point was the head of the Barbados Renewable Energy Association, but who has demitted office to put his energies into the work of the Anglican Church in that area, and in terms of all other churches. So we have people like Mr. Aidan Rogers. We have other people. We have the skills. What we need now is to put our feet forward. I urge government to do this, and to take the plunge, because this can make a big change in the way in which Barbados functions. Mr. Deputy President, one of the things I have steered away from is in terms of talking about the whole structural reforms which have been advocated and for which there are different views. I have stayed away from it. I have decided, Mr. Deputy President, that is a conversation which I will keep restricted to my very tiny kitchen cabinet of about 3 when we are walking, or, taking a dip, or I wouldn't even say sipping wine, because we're not that. We're more proletarian, sir, than nutrition. So it is more of a walk than a drink. But we could have rum, yes, that's correct. But seriously, sir, I have steered away from that discussion. But what I will say is that if indeed any government in Barbados, any government, decided, and there isn't anything wrong to doing it, to follow a structured adjustment plan so that X amount of people, and I won't call the number because various numbers are recommended, are laid off. That shouldn't just happen where you lay people off. What can happen is if you have a proper renewable energy program, you should be able to integrate the two, and you should have jobs that people are there and are available for people to get. And that's my point. That is my point. Whoever leads Barbados, or continues to lead Barbados, or whatever, take it however you will have to address that problem. No, I mean, these studies have been, yeah, but you have to put your head to it. In other words, you can't just lay people off, but you have to work the two in tandem. You have to have a strong renewable energy policy. You have to invest in technologies. That is why I spent so much time, Mr. Deputy President, talking about technologies and innovation. In other words, I am just hinting at things here. I am not saying anything in too strong a measure, sir. I retain that for the kitchen cabinet. All I'm saying here, sir, is that these two things must be married. I suggest, sir, that they can be married. And I suggest, sir, that in that respect, the future can be bright, sir. In that respect, sir, I am engaging in the guided optimism about which I spoke earlier and which I use as a basis of these short remarks. So let me begin, sir, let me end rather, I should say, sir. I got you a little concerned there. Yes, I'm told I have 5 minutes. I had planned to just be here for 30 minutes, but I understand now, I understand that I've broken my promise, as Senator Fraser tells me. I wouldn't, anyhow. But, Madam, Mr. Deputy President, I will begin this short, see, I'm beginning, I'm getting spurred on, but I shall end this short peroration on a note of guided optimism. And I will continue to take comfort from Pascal when he says, I have made this speech. He said letter, but I say this speech longer than usual because I have not had the time to make it shorter. I repeat that. And therefore, sir, I end with no sound and no fury. I end, sir, with a profound hope that some of these modest comments may and will be considered. Considered, yes, sir. Implemented, hopefully. And that they can add and will add to the recovery which Barbados urgently needs, and to which in spirit its citizenry is integrally bound in plenty and in time of need.